Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cyclical Investors Club YouTube channel. My name is Corey Kramer. Today we're going to be analyzing Deckers Outdoor stock, ticker DECK. This one came in by request down in the comments section of one of my other videos. If you have a request, just put it down in the comments. Once I get the ticker up on the whiteboard behind me, I will let you know that it's on the list, and eventually I'll make a video. If it's a stock that's in the S&P 500 like Deckers is, I post those on YouTube for free. The rest I post over on Patreon at the $5 a month tier level. There's also a free tier over on Patreon where I post all these same videos that I post on YouTube if you don't want to rely on the YouTube algorithm to get access to my videos. In addition to those, I have a $25 a month tier level where every week I'll share the best stock idea that I can find in the market. This is kind of for people who every now and then they get critiques that my buy prices are too low and they'll never occur. If you're one of those people that thinks that, you can go over to Patreon and I will give you a pick every single week. Even if it's not the absolute best price that I want, it will be the best price that I can find in that particular week. So there'll be a steady flow of stock ideas. It's pretty good if you're dollar cost averaging into like a retirement fund or something like that. So consider checking out those links, even if it's just the free tier. It's worth checking out, I think. If you do join any of the paid tiers on Patreon, you get a big discount if you ever decide to join the full Cyclical Investors Club service over on Seeking Alpha. So that's a benefit as well. As always, this is not individual investing advice. This is just how I analyze stocks. And for Decker, I'm going to... So that there's an issue that comes up sometimes, occasionally, where certain stocks have kind of like an internal transition that happens with their businesses, where what they were doing in the past, it has maybe not like a full transition into a different business, but some other aspect of their business picks up and becomes the growth driver for the business, or they have new products. Because what I do is I lean heavily on history and what the businesses have done in the past to help guide the future. Now, I know that it's not always going to be 100% accurate, but about 80% of the time, if you control for a few things, it's a good guide and it lets you know what's possible that has happened in the past could happen again in the future, and that's usually better than not being aware that those type of things can happen. So Deckers, just for some examples, there's Microsoft switching to cloud, right, from like desktop software and things like that. There's Amazon with AWS. There is Apple with smartphones. That one's a little more obvious. So there are some of these businesses, like S&P Global is a good one. I'm trying to think of if I can think of any more off the top of my head. But sometimes these transitions or additions or transformations, I'm not really sure like the best word to use. They can create these great, or Netflix is a really good one too. I actually do own Netflix now, but I should have bought it back when they went digital and everybody hated it, and then it ended up working out. So there are these situations that arise sometimes that don't fit very good with the type of analysis that I typically like to do. And a person has to be careful adjusting too much to these situations, because you can get a lot of losers. One of the benefits of using history as a guide is it really helps me narrow down my big losers. My core strategies really, if I have more than 20%, I've almost never had more than 20% losers. So often like 10% is, it depends on how aggressive I'm being and if I'm counting the growth strategy, which naturally has more losers because the winners are much bigger winners. But I like to avoid losers. They really kind of hurt the portfolio. And if I have to let a couple winners slip by in order to avoid like a whole bunch of losers that I would pick up naturally, then that's the approach that I'm willing to take. Because I know I have good enough strategies where I can find a lot of these opportunities. With that said, if I develop a new strategy, it's going to be one that helps me try to identify these stocks like Decker, which, they basically have like newer brands that came out that were popular. Like Hoka is the obvious one. There's a couple more that were really successful starting, we can zoom in the fast graph here. Starting in about 2018, 50% growth, almost 10, then 40, 20, 19, 50. That's incredible, right? Now, before this, the reason that I didn't really catch on fully with these guys is these guys have had a cyclical past with their earnings. So, and definitely the stock price. So yeah, if we shorten it a little bit to give you a better picture, we have a 32% decline in earnings. Let's see what basic earnings look like. Yeah, so they look a little nastier, right? So we have these declines that occur sometimes, and they're in retail, which is notoriously difficult to get good, steady, long-term growth out of. My approach, and still my approach, is to treat this as a deeply cyclical business. So, but it can cause me to miss out on opportunities sometimes when I do that, because they've been taking market share. They have basically like a secular growth situation going for them, and it doesn't really look like it. They might have a slower growth than the 20% or whatever they've been bringing in, but it doesn't really look like it's going to let up like in a major way going forward, unless maybe we have some sort of bad recession or something like that. So I don't even think I was tracking it for quite a while, because retail is just really difficult. But you can also look at like a shoe company like Nike and Adidas to some sense, although I treated that as a cyclical as well. But you can see that there's potential there to not be so cyclical over time if you can grow fast enough to just be like a moderately cyclical business that's growing so well that even though you have a down cycle, it's not like horrible. But the issue with Deckers was that their history of drawdowns in the stock price was pretty deep. And so here, if we get my spreadsheet to load. So I've been treating it as a deep cyclical. 2001 fell 88%. This is the stock price. 2008 fell 73%. 2020 fell 43%. So whatever you want to say about the earnings, the stock price has definitely been susceptible to these gigantic drawdowns. So I've been really careful with it and cautious about getting in it. But maybe in the future I need to figure out a way, maybe just take a smaller position size. That's one of the things we've been doing in the Cyclical Investors Club lately, taking, instead of 1% being the smallest position, 0.5% of a portfolio being the smallest position. And maybe that's a way for me to be able to be a little bit more aggressive if I think there's a potential of this kind of internal transformation. I can't really think of like a better word to like cover all the types of businesses that I'm looking for. Usually I'm just quick to dismiss those stories because they fail so many times. So 9 out of 10 times, at least 8 out of 10 times, it's all just hype, and people get sucked into these themes and everything about how this time it's different, or they have a fantastic new product. I'm not just talking about Deckers here, obviously. This is just this type of stock. And so I've seen that go on so many times that I'm a little jaded and cautious when it comes to... I know how much money I've avoided losing to some degree by being careful. So I'm a little tentative there. But if I was going to take a swing at Deckers, I would be aiming for a 50% drawdown. I would and a minus 70% drawdown. It's having... And like the 70% would have got you in during a bad recession, like the 2008. 50%, probably some sort of multiple compression, mid-cycle adjustment, market freak out. That will probably be able to get a person into the stock. The price will probably fall enough to get a person into the stock at that point. You can see what it was here, roughly. back in, and this was pretty fast too. So when the market freaks out, yeah, there's the 43%. That might have actually been the 2021. So yeah, I mean, it almost had a 50% decline. Let's look actually. Oh, they were just barely below it. They peaked at 75. Yeah, they were below it, right? Yeah. So they fell, if you just dove tippy peak price to trough, that's a little over 50%. So we saw that happen already. It had what, a 20, and they had fantastic growth. It had nothing to do with like the fundamentals of the business. It's just a market kind of freaked out. So we have a 28 PE at the peak. Up here, we're at like a 37, so it's even more richly valued than it was during this. And it dropped 50% there in less than like 6 months, it looks like. Maybe about six to 8 months. So it's definitely possible that you could see this get 50% off its highs. And if you wanted that price, let me see if I can get my spreadsheet back up. It is, I'll say it here in case you're listening, 42% lower, $92 a share is what, $92.24 is what we would be looking at for 50% off the high. I think that's this one. Yeah, 180.92. Yeah, that's the most recent high. So that's my really kind of rough estimate on maybe where to take a chance at it. But really well-run company. I wish I could have maybe identified it a little bit earlier. But like I said, there's always going to be a few of them that slip through my fingers. But I am always on the lookout for methods that I can repeat on more than one stock, right? Or more than one industry. If I can come up with a good way, and maybe especially if I could kind of back test it. But again, there's not very many of these businesses that actually manage to pull this type of thing off. There are more retail trends and fads and things like that. So you do see it a little bit more, but these guys have enough great underlying growth that, you know, it's not like Crocs or something like that, right? So that's just kind of, you know, way up and way down whenever people decide they like Crocs. I have a video on Crocs. I think it's over on Patreon, but just as an example. So this kind of super popular, not popular, popular again, not popular, super popular again, right? So that's kind of a different thing that we see with them than we see with Decker. So hopefully that helped a little bit. Not, you know, when I don't really know, I like to just say it. I don't try to pretend like I know a bunch of stuff that I don't. And I always try to play the odds, but I'm also always on the lookout for, you know, relatively quick ways that I can identify kind of maybe something that doesn't fit within my strategies right now that I could add. I'm always on the lookout for that, because if you can get like a Netflix or something during one of these transitions or transformations or additions of new types of business, if you can get one of those at the right time, I mean, you can make a lot of money. So Netflix, I did not buy near the bot. I bought during this. We'll take a look at it. I don't know if I've done Netflix on the channel. I feel like I should have. Might have to go back and just do Netflix. Right down here is the time period I'm talking about. This is when we all stopped getting our X-Files series in the mail, you know, like 3 times a week or whatever. And they switched to digital. I mean, they started switching before that, but this is when the market like really started kind of punishing the stock. So we're down at like $8. So yeah, if you would have been smart enough to figure out what was going on then, you know, you could have made 43% a year, 8,000%. That wasn't even like the very bottom. So now, fortunately, I was able to buy during this kind of downturn, which has been nice for me. But I mean, I'm not. I'm like 2 and 3 xing. I'm not 10 and 13 xing. So, all right, found that useful. If you like the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. You have a request, put it down in the comment section. I will get that on my list and make you a video and do my best to kind of just explain how I think about the stock or how it fits within my strategies. Later.